So inverse sine -7 is one that's undefined. I'm just repeating this, okay, for the recording. Because there's no y values on the unit circle of -7. Everything on that unit circle is between -1 and +1. Hopefully you got the hang of the fact that sine x and cosine x are always between -1 and +1. So inverse sine -7 is undefined. What about inverse sine 1/2? Sometimes students say, well, it looks like you're just saying the answer. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. There's not a lot of writing here. Okay, inverse sine 1/2. Let's see. Pi over 6. Okay. Oh, wait, pi over 6 or 30 degrees. How are they told? Oh, on number 5, they say write it using pi. So it is pi over 6. That's why you call it pi over 6 rather than 30 degrees, isn't it? Let's see. Oh, wow. Here's problem 6. Let me just choose one. Which one do y'all think looks tricky? 6, 7, maybe 8? Let's do number 8. Arc cotangent negative square root of 3 over 3. Now that's going to take a little bit of thought. Okay, arc. Wait, I said arc cotangent? No, it's arc tangent. I may have said the wrong thing there, but it's arc tangent negative square root of 3 over 3. So I need to think of the unit circle. And what part of the unit circle are we going to be looking at if this is arc tangent? Negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. Since it's a negative number, it's not going to be quadrant 1. It's going to be down here in quadrant 4. So you sort of have to go through each one of these and see which one, if you go sine over cosine, are you going to get negative square root of 3 over 2? Are y'all following my logic? Let's see. If I go at negative 30, let's try that one and see. At negative 30 degrees, if I go sine over cosine, I'd have a negative 1/2 over square root of 3 over 2. I could simplify that by multiplying above and below by 2. So I'd have negative 1 over the square root of 3. And if I rationalize that, is that going to give me negative square root of 3 over 3? Yes. Yeah, so Jerry, were you the one that said that one? That's right. So arc tangent negative square root of 3 over 3. Oh, wow. Look at answer choice A. I wonder what the heck they were doing there. Okay. Did we decide negative 30? So would that be negative pi over 6? Notice they're stating it in radians here. Okay. That was at negative 30 degrees. Sine over cosine. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a little note. I'm going to write tangent. And I'm going to go sine over cosine on each of these. Sine over cosine here, what did it turn out to be? Negative square root of 3 over 3. What about right here? If I go sine over cosine, what would I get? Negative 1. And what about here? At negative 60 degrees. If I go sine over cosine, could y'all figure out what that tangent is? You go sine over cosine. Here's just my thoughts. Now, tangent negative 60 is sine negative square root of 3 over 2 over 1/2 multiply by 2. And are we getting negative square root of 3? Okay. And that, I mean, you're sort of doing that. Oh, how would that, well, I don't see another arc tangent on this page. Let's see, like, what about number 9? Arc cosine negative 1. Okay, arc cosine negative 1. Oh, did we?
Yeah. Should be 135.
You're doing tangent.
Isn't that a cosine?
Arc cosine negative 1. You look between 0 and pi.
Yeah, so
Okay.
180. Okay.
Yeah, so 180 degree. Oops, I shouldn't have circled that. 180 or pi.
Yeah.
For this arc cosine negative 1, how do they want us to write it? Just as a pi? This is sort of awkward up here because I'm not really writing anything. It just seems like I'm shuffling a lot of papers, doesn't it? Okay. But y'all really have the problems that have a lot of writing, where you start working and writing, and after 3 pages you have that answer? Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I think we've already done, maybe not. Let's do it again. Arc sine, or inverse sine, negative 1/2. Let's see. Here's my thoughts. I'm going to use, for inverse sine, negative 1/2, I'm going to look just between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. Oops. And where would that be? It's not up here if it's a negative 1/2. Where's sine negative 1/2?
Negative 30.
Negative 30 degrees, or negative pi over 6. How do they want it? Radian. So negative pi over 6. Oh, let's do number 12. Inverse cotangent square root of 3. Let me just go ahead and write it down. Here's the one we're doing. Inverse cotangent square root of 3. Inverse cotangent square root of 3. Was that a positive square root of 3 or a negative? This is my number 12 that I'm doing. It's a positive. So, yeah, we're in quadrant 1. So when we go cosine over sine, which one would get that square root of 3? Well, it's definitely not pi over 4. Cosine over sine there would give you a 1. If you go cosine over sine, is it 30 degrees? If you go cosine over sine, can y'all do that simplification in your head? You write square root of 3 over 2 over 1/2. Multiply above and below by 2. And wouldn't that reduce just a square root of 3? So it's those inverse tangents and inverse cotangent that require, ooh, I circled that, but that's not really the answer. The answer is the 30 degrees or the pi over 6. Let's see. Oh, number 13 is a good one, because it has inverse cosecant. You remember how I said we were going to do inverse secant and inverse cosecant? You write it as the reciprocal function. The reciprocal of cosecant is sine. And what's the reciprocal of negative 1? Negative 1. So we're looking at inverse sine. So that's the negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. Where is sine negative 1? Negative 90 degrees or negative pi over 2. So let's see, negative 90 degrees. Or in this case, I'm thinking this wanted in radians. Use pi as needed, so negative pi over 2 is the one. Okay, the last two gotta be hard ones, right? Aren't the last two? It's the last one, it has to be hard. So let's see. Number 14, arc secant. I'm going to think of this as arc what? The reciprocal of secant is cosine. Now, we're going to have to flip this. Flip this. That would be a negative 3 over 2 square root of 3. And how would I rationalize that? It'd be negative 3 square root of 3 all over 6. Does that reduce to negative square root of 3 over 2? So when I flip this, I would get negative square root of 3 over 2. So that's what I'm going to look at my unit circle for. Am I looking from negative 90 degrees to positive, or am I looking at the top half up here? The top half. And so I forgot, what was it? Where's cosine negative square root of 3 over 2? Looking at the top, where's cosine negative square root of 3 over 2? 150 degrees, or 5 pi over 6. 150 degrees, or 5 pi over 6. How do they want us to answer it? Radians? Oh, wow. You know what? Y'all can't do this, but I can. Let's pretend, look at how, didn't they regenerate to the same problem? Does that happen a lot with y'all? For the same problem, you wind up with the same problem twice? Huh?
That happened a few times.
It happens a lot for me when I print this stuff out. 14 and 15, the same thing, except it has a little minus 1. So y'all don't do this, but I'm going to. I'm going to change this problem to read inverse cosecant negative 1. If you did that on your homework, it's going to count it wrong, okay? Because you'll be given the wrong answer. But for illustration purposes, suppose we have inverse cosecant negative square root of 2, negative 2 square root of 3 over 3. We would write that as inverse what? What's the reciprocal? Sine. And now, when we flip this, it's going to be exactly what we did right there. So, okay. Sounds like you have the hang of it. We're looking at inverse sine negative square root of 3 over 2. Well, that would be inverse sine. Is it 0 to pi or negative pi over 2 to pi over 2? Well, it's negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. In fact, it's going to be down here because it's a negative square root of 3 over 2. So where out here is sine negative square root of 3 over 2? Negative 60 degrees. Or negative pi over 3. How are they telling us to write it? Probably in radians. I think the first few problems, it's that the first, say, write it in degrees, and then it switches to radians. There's a lot of thought going on here, but not a lot of writing.
Are we going to do another unit circle for the exam?
I'll give you a blank one if you want to fill it out for it, okay? I'll give you all a blank unit circle for you to fill out. And we're going to solve, on Monday we solved some trig equations. We're going to be back using this unit circle, but without this negative and positive. Without, we're just going to be looking 0 to 2 pi. The only time we're doing this negative stuff here is with what? The inverse functions, okay? So, I'll see y'all on Monday, and we'll take a break right now because class is over. Oh, wow. Do you have any questions?